Welcome to A Course in Miracles, where you'll discover health and well-being through inner peace. Your host is Eloisa Ramos, EFT master and author of Beyond Self-Esteem, Discovering Your Boundless Self-Worth. Using EFT, the Ramos clearing technique, and the principles of A Course in Miracles, you'll learn how to open your mind to healing and to all that is inherently yours: deep fulfillment, vitality, joy, and inner peace.
Welcome, everyone, to today's program, Heal the World, the Healing of Our Mind with A Course in Miracles. My name is Eloisa Ramos, and today we are taking guidance from lessons 117 to 130 of A Course in Miracles. And it is our attempt to bring healing to the world through the healing of our mind. And this involves the releasing of our belief in a world of separation, of bodies and egos, so that the world of oneness and peace can be revealed to us. So welcome. Let's begin with lesson 130. It says, it is impossible to see two worlds. What this means is that our mind cannot hold both love and fear at the same time. If we're in fear, love is nowhere to be found. If we're consumed by hate and anger, peace is inconceivable. And if we employ comparisons to define ourselves in terms of differences, it will be impossible to see our inherent equality and oneness. And though our eyes cannot see and our thinking mind cannot conceive of a world of only oneness, peace, and love, it is there waiting for us to change our mind about what we want to see. It is my belief that we are ready and in a position to accept the power of our mind and choose to heal. My EFT tapping work has this to me over and over. A Course in Miracles says in Lesson 130, perception is consistent. What you see reflects your thinking, and your thinking but reflects your choice of what you want to see. Your values are determiners of this. For what you value, you must want to see, believing what you see is really there. Unquote. It is within our power to change our thinking and choose love instead of fear. This is a reversal of what we have been choosing in our unconsciousness or sleep, but it will heal our mind. The healing of the world is a comprehensive awakening of each of our minds when we decide we want only peace and love and practice our decision in our daily life. Forgiveness, then, plays a vital part in this choice because, as A Course in Miracles teaches, it is the key to happiness and the answer to our search for peace. This is from lessons 121 and 122. Today, we will also be doing surrogate EFT tapping to help release resentment for past decisions that we made in fear and now regret. And for those of you that are not familiar with surrogate EFT, I will explain that before we start the tapping. So let's begin by looking at forgiveness, but particularly at blame. Because if we did not blame or see sin, there would be nothing to forgive. Forgiveness is but the undoing of blame or the misperception of sin. When we blame, we are seeing separation, holding someone else guilty for our pain. When we blame ourselves, we split our mind because there has to be two. One that judges and blames, and the other that is condemned. Without blame, punishment would not be merited, and fear of making mistakes would not exist. Lesson 121 says, forgiveness is acquired. It is not inherent in the mind, which cannot sin. As sin is an idea you taught yourself forgiveness must be learned by you as well, but from a teacher other than yourself, who represents the other self, with a capital S, in you. Through him, you learn how to forgive the self you think you made and let it disappear. Thus, you return your mind as one to him who is yourself, with a capital S, and who can never sin, unquote. So, let's ask, what are we doing when we blame? Well, when I blame, I'm making some conclusions. First, me or something that I value or identify with has been personally done wrong or hurt or attacked by something or someone that's not me. And because I feel this pain and hurt, or because there is pain and hurt, that proves this has happened. And two, my safety appears to be threatened, and my mind needs to identify the cause or enemy to defend myself from future attack. And having been wronged, I will feel justified in my condemnation and anger, seeing punishment as merited or revenge as a payback. Let's look at an example. I work with someone who would feel a need to punish himself whenever he did something wrong. We'll call him David. One morning, David was making breakfast for himself, boiling water to make hot cereal. His wife, Clara, walked in after taking their dog for a walk, and she really enjoyed that time with the dog, having a routine of giving him treats after their walk. David took the cereal, measured it, and poured it into the boiling water, when he realized he had measured the wrong amount of water for the cereal. With frustration, he exclaimed, "Damn it!" That instant when the dog heard this, it left Clara, who was about to offer him a treat, and would not go back to her. Clara got upset, feeling like David had broken that connection she had with the dog, and said some words to that effect to David. David felt like it had been his fault, that Clara was upset, and that he had ruined that moment for her. He thought, quote, "I am insane. Why does anyone bother to love me?" unquote. David, by the way, is not clinically insane. Just to be clear, he is quite normal and lives a very normal life. So, let's look at what happened. The cascade of reactions started because David made a mistake. He measured the wrong amount of water. From his point of view, that was unacceptable and unforgivable. It was not just a mistake to learn from and let go. It was much more than that to David. And yes, by just looking at this small event, we might want to agree with David's evaluation of himself, because his reactions appear to be out of proportion to the mistake. Of course, as it happens with EFT, once we started tapping on this event, the past childhood events where he had been punished, where he had not, when he had done something wrong, showed up. But let's just take the breakfast situation to look at David's assumptions around blame. He blamed himself for ruining his cereal, for getting frustrated, and on top of that, for causing Clara's upset. Not only were these things unacceptable, but deserving of punishment. So let's question them. Number one, did David hurt himself by ruining his breakfast? Number two, is he his actions or behavior? In other words, is he his mistake, or is he the one doing the action that is judged a mistake? And number 3, was he in control of his actions when he made the mistake and then could control his frustrated reaction? And number 4, was he the direct cause of Clara's negative feelings? Okay, so let's start with number 1. Did this water mistake hurt David? Well, I'm going to share a similar experience to help you decide. I banged my laptop on the side of my car the other day as I was getting out, and I heard myself saying, sorry, as I looked at it. When I heard myself say this, I kind of woke up and exclaimed, what? I'm apologizing to my laptop? That didn't make any sense, of course. So I wondered if I was believing that inanimate things have feelings. And I use muscle testing, so I explore, I play around. So I muscle tested that question, and sure enough, I got a yes. So in my mind, in that moment, my laptop had feelings. Obviously, I could see this was nonsense, and I laughed as I cleared that belief with my Ramos clearing technique, which, if you know muscle testing, you can download at my website, completely free. So I go into the house, and I'm laughing, and so my son's looking at me, and I tell him what had just happened. And he said, it's valuable to you. And I considered that, and he was right. The laptop was valuable to me, and so I muscle tested to see if I was identified and attached to it. And sure enough, I got a yes. Now, in the past, I have talked about identification. This is where our consciousness gets identified with something, and we subconsciously become that thing. It's like where we lose ourselves watching a movie, and we become the main character. So whatever happens to the character, it feels personal, and it's like it's really happening to us. So this is what happened with my laptop, and this explains why I apologized for my laptop. In that moment, when I banged it, that transgression was personal, because that was no longer just a piece of property. It was actually a part of me, a part of my self-identity. So when I banged it, I was subconsciously registering that I was hitting myself, and I felt the need to apologize. I hope this example makes it clear why A Course in Miracles refers to the world that arises when we identify with our ego thought system as insanity or illusion. Because there was no real hurt, but because I gave value to my laptop, I automatically reacted to protect it. Because it's a thing that breaks, and it's definitely not eternal, even though I would like it to be. So, when we go back to David, did he really hurt himself by measuring the wrong amount of water? Well, no, of course not. But his feeling of frustration told him a different story. So, perhaps he values making his cereal exactly the way he wants it or likes it. He will be identified and attached to having it a particular way. His mistake then would then be interpreted as an attack because his actions prevented him from giving himself what he wanted or what he liked. And if he's identified with his wants and his likes, and most of us are, it's going to feel personal when we do something and get in our own way to getting what we want. So let's look at assumption number 2. if David's actions resulted in doing something wrong, does that make him wrong? Okay, so just assume that we all judged it the same way. And yeah, he really screwed up his cereal. That was wrong. Does that make him wrong? Is he his actions? Hopefully, you will see that this is also about identification. But now, it's identification with what we do, with our actions, with our behavior. And we are taught this very early on when people ask us what we are going to be when we grow up instead of what we are going to do. Because of the confusion that exists between being and doing, and this comes from our identification with things, let me give you an example of this confusion. We may want to believe that our successful accomplishments or failures, which are actions or doings, convert us or magically morph us into a new self. We are now being successful or being a failure. So let me clarify. Being is not anything. I cannot be that which success is. I continue to be myself with what we have defined as success or failure. Okay? That's why my being, or what I am, never changes, because it is nothing in particular. It cannot be excluded from anything, and therefore is one with everything. So, can David's wrongdoings make him wrong or bad in his being? And if you can understand the difference between the doing and the being, you will agree that it's a no. So let's go back to number 3, assumption number 3. When David blames himself for his mistake, he's assuming he had control of his actions. Did he realize he was measuring the wrong amount of water when he poured it? No. We don't consciously do mistakes, but what we need to understand is that we are allowing our unconscious thinking to miscreate because we're not accepting full responsibility for what we value and believe and keep hidden in our subconscious mind. And we will be doing some tapping on some of that unconscious stuff a little later. So the last assumption, okay, did David cause Clara to get upset? Where do our feelings come from? Have you ever asked yourself that? Yes, external things can trigger our emotions, but triggers are not causes. Only our mind or thinking is causal. What is a trigger for one person is not a trigger for another. Each person reacts when different buttons are pushed, and we refer to those buttons as triggers. Pushing a button is not a cause, even if it was done deliberately, because there has to be something in the person's past that has not healed for the trigger to do anything. That trigger is associated very specifically to a person's unhealed past. If the trigger has no associated memories, it will have no effect at all. It is always our thinking that is causal. And so, yes, Clara got upset, but not for the reason she thinks. And that's something that, of course, in Miracle says also. She thinks that it was David's fault. And actually, David thinks the same thing. But in fact, there had to be something in her past that got triggered, that brought up that upset. Okay. Now, I understand that for some of you, these ideas will meet with internal resistance because we want to believe that we have the power to make ourselves into anything we want, bad or good, simply by identifying with what we do, with how we look, with our titles, with our achievements, with our body, etc. We will not want to let that go because it is also what makes us special in our mind. And so we suffer the instability of our self-made identities since they come from our identifications and not our Creator, because it gives our ego the opportunity to believe it can be greater than God. In David's case, his behavior has been given greater power than God, since it can change what God created into something wrong or bad. In addition, once we equate ourselves with what we do, we're going to see ourselves as a body. And once we accept that we are bodies, our consciousness or awareness gets stuck in the ego world of time and physicality. This is where separation is the norm. Everything has boundaries. Things are solid, and space separates them from one another. Here we have separate minds that hold individual ideas that are concepts with bounded definitions and personal thoughts that can be kept secret and hidden from others. It is a world of fear because anything that is separate and independent or hidden from us can turn against us, and we don't have any control over it. It is a world where what we give, we lose because we cannot keep what we give. And love can be wasted, lost, or spent the more we give it away because it has left us and is no longer ours. In this world, giving is conditional on getting something back, or it entails sacrifice. It is a world of mistrust because nothing is certain. It is a world of impermanence where change and deterioration comes to everything physical and non-physical, like our unstable identity that can be lost. It is a sad world because all things come to an end, including life and love. It is a world of danger, survival, scarcity, opposition, and attack, where we must fight and defend our meager property because that is life, what we are, a thing, a body, a piece of property that can be transgressed, violated, and no matter how much we defend and fight to live, death always wins. Yet who in their right mind would want such a world? A Course in Miracles says in Lesson 129, quote, "Beyond this world, there is a world I want," unquote. But Lesson 130 also says, quote, "It is impossible to see two worlds. Fear must make blind, for this its weapon is. Fear obscures in darkness what is there. Truth is eclipsed by fear, and what remains is but imagined. What would you wish to keep in such a dream? No one can see a world his mind has not accorded value, and no one can fail to look upon what he believes he wants." So, is it possible that we could actually want and value blame and punishment? Because so often that is the world we appear to be in. Here's where our mind gets very confused. David believes that doing wrong, like not playing fair, cheating, and lying, should be punished. In fact, that's such a strong belief, he goes into survival mode when that does not happen. So now his solution really is to punish himself when he screws something up. And the blame and anger and hitting himself are necessary for him to feel safe and feel in control. He's afraid that unless unfairness is punished, he will be forgotten, ignored, or neglected. In short, and I quote, "Nobody will love me," unquote, has made love conditional on blame and punishment. It's no wonder that A Course in Miracles tells us that those that treat us with a lack of love are simply calling for love. This whole world of fear and separation is calling out for love, and love is what brings healing to our mind. For this reason, every decision we make is a choice between a grievance or a miracle, as A Course in Miracles says. And why Lesson 122 says, quote, "Forgiveness offers everything I want. What could you want? Forgiveness cannot give. Do you want peace? Forgiveness offers it. Do you want happiness? A quiet mind, a certainty of purpose, and a sense of worth and beauty that transcends the world? Do you want care and safety and the warmth of sure protection always? Do you want a gentleness that never can be hurt, abiding comfort, and a rest so perfect it can never be upset? Forgive and be forgiven. As you give, you will receive," unquote. Forgiveness is actually offering our mind the memory of another world where we are not bodies, but one with our Creator and creation. Lesson 124 says, quote, "Let me remember I am one with God," unquote. Because those that do us wrong, through our forgiveness, offer us the opportunity to remember our true reality as spirit and not body. In my experience, that which gets hurt is never our true self. It's a self-image or a self-made identity. We have talked about self-images in other programs quite a bit, and of course, the body is a self-image. But for me, this is one of the hardest ideas to accept and get through my mind, because we define the body as solid. And to me, solid meant real. That's how I had reality defined. Things that were solid were real, and things that were not physical were not. It was physicality that made something real to me. And so the idea that A Course in Miracles presents can be a little hard to process. Now, there's a lot of scientific research now, though, that is also saying the same thing. If you'd like to read a little bit more about that, there is an article in Forbes magazine, and it's by Deepak Chopra. I hope I pronounced that right. And I'm trying to remember if I wrote the title of that article down. In that article, he looks at the physical body and how the brain is, the brain processing is so low that it's not able to see that, in fact, the body is not, that there's how do I explain it? That there is spaces where the body is not there, basically. But it happens so quickly that the image, it's a little bit like a film strip. in the, like those films, the reel-to-reel movies that have the separate pictures, they're all separate pictures. But what we see is this one movement. We see this fluid image and movement as if it was completely one thing, and it's not. It's a bunch of separate little pictures, and that's kind of how he describes it. It was written in 2006, and it has something to do with, I think the title said, What I See, I Believe, or something to that effect. But if you Google it in Forbes magazine, I think you could pull it up. So anyway, the idea that we're not a body is not easy to embrace, but it is very important in understanding forgiveness, because when we blame, we are saying, "Look, there's hurt. I feel the hurt, and therefore I want to know who is responsible. Where did it come from?" And recognize is that the hurt is coming from our own thinking. The Course in Miracles explains that our mind made the body because the mind is the cause of the manifested world, or everything that we perceive. And what we perceive is a world of separation and physicality, which is unreal or illusion. And this is, of course, the complete opposite of what I believed. I grew up believing that the body or the physical universe was created by God. And that took a bit of releasing for me, but I understood, because I also believed that God is eternal and my body is not. And therefore, everything that God creates is to his likeness. How could God have created that which is not eternal? There's an inconsistency there that really helped me to understand that no, the body is not real. It's part of the manifested perceptual world. And it could not have been made by God, because God is eternal and can only create like him herself. So, but it is definitely a difficult belief to undo, and even now, I still get triggered, and I still need to clear it here and there. So it's been imprinted in our belief system for a long time. In fact, that's why we find ourselves in a physical world. That's why we have this experience of birth and death. But getting back to forgiveness, it is important to understand that, because when we feel hurt, we need to recognize where that hurt is coming from. And it's from our own thinking. It's from our own mind. It's from the interpretation that we are giving that situation. And people that do EFT tapping will have an easier time seeing this, because as they tap through the layers, all that pain is just released, and you begin to see that it was just in your mind. But say, for example, someone insults us, and they say things about us that are lies, and maybe we get embarrassed, and we feel that we were put in a bad light in front of others. What are we talking about? We're talking about someone insulting our self-image, degrading the self-image that we have of ourselves, or that we think others have of us. It's basically a picture of what we think we are that is getting insulted, okay? It's not our true self. And if we tap on this feeling of being insulted and we release it, and then when the intensity is lower, say in the 3s or 4s, you can ask yourself, what is it that is feeling this hurt? And you will be able to see, oh, it's really this self-image that I'm trying to protect because I really value it. I value people seeing me as good or important or intelligent or physically attractive. Basically, I value the specialness that comes with that. And because I believe that this makes me worthy and deserving of people's attention and love or whatever. But it's a whole belief system, okay, that's just made up. So, or it could be my pride that gets hurt or my honor, and they will need defending in order to not lose them. Who wants to lose their pride? It doesn't feel good, okay? But we're not our pride. So how can pride, just like how can a laptop feel hurt? So whatever it is that's feeling that hurt, okay, if you disidentify from it, you will see that what is feeling hurt or is feeling threatened is not actually you. It's not your true self. And if you can see that, you can question your experience. Well, wait a minute. How is it possible that pride or intelligence or even my own body, because obviously physical injury happens to a body, can feel hurt? Just like when we own a car and we're parked and someone backs up and hits our car, we feel it. We're in the car and we feel the injury as if it was done to us, meaning our own body. But it wasn't. If we're identified with a car, it will feel that way. It will feel personal. But the car can't feel it. It's metal. It got dented, yes, but it did not feel hurt. So if you disidentify from your body and your body gets dented, do you feel the hurt in your body? Well, it definitely appears that way, okay? But what happens is that the information of the injury, the physical sensations and the internal physical changes, that information travels through our nervous system to our brain, where the signals are interpreted by our mind as quote-unquote pain. There are children that come to mind with a type of disorder, and I can't remember the name of it, who never feel physical pain even though their bodies get banged up. So the body is not separate and independent from our mind. It does not have feelings and a mind of its own. It only takes instruction from our thinking, from our mind. So the body is defined, and it's made to perceive pain and pleasure signals. But the body itself is not feeling the pain. That's not where it's registering. Our mind is registering that because it is identified with our bodies. And this is not easy to see. I completely understand that. But I think at one level, you understand that the body belongs to you, just like the car belongs to you. The problem is that once we identify with the body, our awareness gets stuck in this world of impermanence, of separation and physicality, and we do feel all the pain and suffering, even though our true self is not the one feeling it. That's why this world is described as a dream. Now, if your mind can recognize the illusory nature of pain and suffering, it will heal, freeing itself from illusion. Okay? So let's do some tapping to see if we can help the healing, open up our mind to healing. I picked this particular thing to tap on, and I'm going to do it surrogately because I don't have someone to work with here. So what surrogate tapping or EFT is, it simply involves tapping on yourself on behalf of someone else. So you're basically putting yourself in their place, and you're tapping as if you were feeling what they were feeling, and you're releasing it. And of course, this recognizes the truth that we are not separate, that we are really all just part of the same mind. And so these last week, I was looking at my past, and I noticed that there were some events there that I felt I would rather not do again if I could do them over. And as I saw them, I could see that there was about 3 of them, and I could see that in each case I regretted my actions or words, but I also saw that fear had a hold of me, and I felt the sadness and grief because I saw these mistakes. I saw where these mistakes were coming from, and they were coming from that fear. I realized I needed to forgive myself for my fears, because obviously it was unconscious, and yet I was choosing it. So I want to try something today with surrogate EFT tapping to help you release any blame or unforgiveness you may be holding against yourself. And so for those of you who want to, look up a little more information on surrogate EFT, I do have a page on my website, which is www.healingwitheft.com. But you need to go to the muscle testing tab, and then go to the very, very bottom of the page, and you'll see the link for surrogate EFT. So for now, let's just say that when you tap on yourself for others, in my mind, it's a little bit like a prayer. It's offering a prayer. And I've used it often. I use it quite a bit for my children, for my mother who has Alzheimer's, and just for anyone that you see or that you want to offer, well-being or a prayer to. And so let's see. I want you to begin by thinking of a past mistake, and notice if in that situation you were feeling fear. So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds to think about that. Okay. I also want you to notice if it feels like you did something wrong there or caused someone else hurt. And notice how your fear kept you from doing things differently. Okay. So once you've kind of noticed that, see if you can give that intensity that's there as you think about it. Notice if it's showing up in your body somewhere also. That's also helpful. And then give it a rating of 0 to 10 to indicate how intense this memory feels. 0 is no intensity, and 10 is the worst intensity it could feel. And you're welcome to tap along as I do the surrogate tapping. And so basically, I'm just going to tap on myself for you. And by the way, I got this idea from Gary Craig, the founder of EFT. I had the wonderful pleasure of interviewing him And the next program will be that interview. And he was mentioning how he did surrogate tapping for people that were at a workshop, and how he picked a topic and then left the room and had people do the intensity scale for the topic, and how he tapped outside of the room. And of course, when you do surrogate tapping, you do have to use your intuition to connect to what those issues might be that are there for other people. But he found that when he came back in the room, some of those numbers had gone down. So I would like to try this with all of the listeners. And I would be happy if you're doing this along and you're tapping with me. I would be very interested if you did notice any changes, if you could just send me a quick email letting me know. That would be just wonderful to get feedback on whether this helped you or not. My email, you can contact me on my website, or you can email me at Ramos Healing, RamosHealing at Comcast.net. Okay, so let's start the tapping. I'll go ahead and I'll refocus on that event and start at the karate chop. So even though I have these emotions and feelings around what I did or said, I deeply and completely want to accept myself anyway. So even though I am looking at the memory of this event, and I feel this regret because I feel like it would have been different had I done or said things differently, I deeply and completely want to accept myself anyway. So even though I feel this regret for my mistakes, I deeply and completely accept myself anyway. And then we go to the top of the head. I feel this regret for what happened. In the beginning of the eyebrow. I feel this regret for my part in what happened. Then side of the eye. I feel this regret that things happened the way they happened under the eye. I feel this regret that things did not happen the way that I would have liked them to. Under the nose. I feel this regret, and I feel that what happened happened because I made a mistake. Okay, chin point. I feel this regret, and I can't help but believe that it was my fault. Collarbone. I feel this regret, and it feels like I caused what happened, and it was regrettable. And then under the arm, I feel this regret for what happened in this. Okay, and that's one round. You can take a deep breath if you like. Okay, so now I want you to notice if there was fear there. So we're going to do a round on fear. So even though I regret what happened, I see I was stuck in fear. I deeply and completely want to accept myself anyway. So even though I can see that I was stuck in fear, and that I wasn't able to decide or say anything differently. I deeply and completely accept myself anyway. So even though I see myself in fear, and yet fear is not an excuse for what I did and said, I deeply and completely accept myself. Top of the head. I see that I was in fear, and yet still want to hold myself guilty for what happened. Beginning of the eyebrow. I see I was in fear, and I don't want to let that go because it feels like I need to be responsible for what I said and did. Side of the eye. I see I was in fear, and I regret that I was in fear. Under the eye. I see that I was in fear and made a mistake. And I regret could not have done things differently because of that fear. Under the nose. I see I was in fear, and I'm not liking myself very much right now because of what I'm seeing. Chin point. I see I am in fear, and I don't like to be in fear, and I don't like myself when I'm in fear. Collarbone. I see I am in fear, and I don't like that I'm in fear. I regret that I'm in fear, but I wish that I could have chosen to not be in fear. Okay, under the arm. I see that I'm in fear, and yet it feels like fear was justifiable. Okay, take a deep breath. Okay. Now there may still be some more there. I think we might want to do another round there. Let's see. So even though I have this conflict around fear because it is regrettable, and at the same time it feels like it was necessary to keep me safe. I deeply and completely accept myself. So even though I feel I see myself in fear, and yet it feels like I need to hold on to that because it's what's keeping me safe. I deeply and completely accept myself anyway. So even though it feels like I chose fear because it felt like I was in danger, I deeply and completely accept myself anyway. Okay. Top of the head. This feeling that I needed fear because my life was in danger. This feeling that I needed to listen to fear because my life was in danger. This feeling and belief that my life can be threatened. under the eye, this fear that my life is not eternal, that my life is temporal and can be threatened. Okay, under the nose. This fear that I need fear to be safe. And then chin point. This fear that I need fear to be safe. This fear that I am something that can be threatened and hurt. Okay, under the arm. This fear that I need fear to feel safe. Back to the center, deep breath. Okay. Okay, we're going to do another round. So even though I'm sorry that I chose fear over trusting love, I deeply and completely want to accept myself. So even though I'm sorry that I chose fear over trusting love, I deeply and completely accept myself. So even though I'm deeply sorry that I chose fear over trusting love, I deeply and completely accept myself. Top of the head. I'm so sorry that I chose fear. Beginning of the eyebrow. I had forgotten I had another choice. Side of the eye. I am so sorry that I listened to fear and not to love. Under the eye. I release any sadness, any grief associated with my actions and decisions. Under the nose. I release any emotions associated with my actions and my doings. I forgive myself. Fear is forgivable. Collarbone. I forgive myself. Fear is forgivable. It was made up in my mind. Under the arm. I forgive myself for holding fear. Take a deep breath. Okay. And we're going to stop here because the time is up. And if you find, check on your SUDS level, check the intensity of what you started with the event that you're, and notice if there was any release there. And if you have a minute or two and you did have a release, please feel free to let me know. I'd be very happy to know. Next week, like I said, we're going to be interviewing the founder of EFT, Gary Craig. He is also an avid student of A Course in Miracles, and he's going to tell us about some of his experiences. And he's also going to talk about optimal or spiritual EFT. I think you will really enjoy the interview. So I hope you will join me again. And for now, goodbye and blessings to everyone.